Welcome back. I got Rachel Closson online. Rachel, how are you today?
I'm good, Michael. Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation because we talked a little bit in the pre-show, and as I always joke with my guests, it's like I should just click record as soon as we start because a lot of times there's some really good stuff in there, kids, and so I got to get better at that. You'd think after doing this for 8 years I would learn, but apparently not. So why don't you share a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a wife and mom to two, and I live in the beautiful Tennessee. And I live on a beautiful farm with chickens. And the biggest thing that I guess you could say about me is I used to be an absolute workaholic, and now I'm just in this place of living in intention and just wanting to really share that with others and let them know that you can have success, but also just a beautiful life. And so I'm excited to share that with everyone today.
Yeah, it's so important. And when you connect with what you want your life to be, oh, is that such an amazing feeling? And it's sometimes you forget it because you get through the motions, life happens. As a parent, your kids, have different needs or they need to do something for school or they're going to this type of event or they're fighting off a little cold or something or so you got chickens, so you got a farm and there's needs there you have to address and sometimes things can happen and get in the way. But I think that's the whole thing about living in a state of flow and understanding that yes, things will happen, but if you're in this state where you're just kind of flowing with how life is happening for you based on how you've designed your life, all these little things that come up are like, okay, well, I'll deal with that and then get back to my regular scheduled programming. But I'm seeing a lot of people, unfortunately, are not living that way. They're living in this state of I hate saying the word victimhood, but it's how I see it. It's like instead of taking control of their life, they're basically delegating their life in the direction of their life to others, whether it's their employer, their family, their friends. They're not taking back control of their life, and you see it in their faces. And obviously, being somebody who used to work in healthcare, saw it in the clinics all the time. People that basically are not taking control of their life. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, for me personally, it was trying to juggle motherhood and being a wife and being a business owner. And, for me, I love to work. I work is a passion and hobby of mine. Is kind of where I'm in my creative space. But at the same time, very early on in my business, I guess you could say, at first, I thought it was just I was chasing success. It was like all those achievements, all those things were so fun and great. But it all had a cost to it. And that cost, I would say at that time, didn't really want to look at or accept. It was just something I wanted to chase after and do. And it caught up with me. And I had to come to this realization and this point of like, what am I doing? And the biggest thing that I realized was once I started hitting those achievements and getting all those things and the promotions and the bonuses, it was it was really about just going after like what's next? What's next? It was like this constant chase, a dog chasing its tail. It's just you go round and round and round. It's where is the satisfaction and when do you hit that point? And so for me, I had to kind of take a step back and say, is this how I want to live my life? And if it is, then what does this look like? And how does my family and my self care and my health and all of that play into this piece of business and success? And when I really started getting down to the nitty gritty, and I think a lot of people throw around the word intentionality, and it's kind of like the word of the year. Everybody picks their word, and then we're 3 weeks in or a month in, and it's like, what was my word again? Because a lot of the time, like people actually don't know how to live out a life of intention or live out a life of boldness or authenticity because it's really looked at from a superficial level. And that's where I started going, okay, if I want to look at my life and I want to start living it intentionally, then I can't look at it as a whole because there's so many different pieces to my life, such as my life, my relationships, my business, my health. There are these different pillars, if you will, that we actually have to then go into that kind of then also finger and spread out into different, components. So I really had to start looking at that and saying, say for my relationship, what do I actually want my relationship with my husband to look like? Not what can he do for me, but how can I show up to the best of myself? And can I show up to the best of myself if I am burning the candle at both ends? And that answer was no, I couldn't. And that's where I had to look at everything and say, what do I want in my business? And what do I consider successful? And once I started realizing what my own success was, not what it was determined by anybody else, but me alone for like myself and my family, and I got clear about that, then I was really able to get into, all right, how can I live in alignment with this intentionality? And that's where, I started getting into boundaries. I started getting into more self awareness. I started saying no more often because it was like, does this serve that intentional life that I'm trying to live?
Yeah, there's so much there to unpack, and we'll pick on the no component
There really
first.
is.
Yeah, and no is a complete sentence. I'm not the first one to say that, but I'm a firm believer in that. And what happens, especially in your from my I know your background a bit, and you're driven, successful, want to be the absolute best you can possibly be, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's actually a really good trait because when you're your best, that means your contribution to this world and your family and friends and work and all of that, they're getting the best version of you. And from that aspect, that's important. But what happens is time and time again, if we don't have boundaries, then what happens is we say yes too much to things. And these things that we're saying yes to, more often than not, are good things. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I should do this. I should be on this committee, or I should be on this board of directors and these other five boards of directors. And oh, yes, I'm married and I have kids, and I gotta raise chickens and everything else that you have going on. Eventually you have to kind of integrate. It's not like work-life balance or even work-life harmony. It's kind of integration. And when you were talking about, there's so many different pillars to different things. I thought about a house for a moment. I'm like, okay, yeah, I have a home. Okay. But yeah, but what is that home made of? There's different rooms, there's ceilings, there's floors, there's walls, there's cabinets, there's doors, there's different areas that serve different purposes. And that's in a way a lot like how we are as humans. There's just a lot of things going on that we can get to do. But it boils down to, okay, what's important to me? And I love how you basically laid out how important it is for you to define what success means to you. Just because Gary Vee says success is this, that's for him. Now, yes, his branding and all that stuff is to make more people successful. Good. I think the world needs more successful people. How you approach it, though, and what that looks like can vary individual to individual. And it's one of those things, and I want to hear your thought on this. It's not a set it and forget it. This is an ongoing, everyday activity of what does success look like to me? What do I feel would be a day that I would necessarily classify as being successful. Not that you should necessarily do that, but what does that look like? and again, it ebbs and flows with things, and there's different seasons. The beautiful thing about the great state of Tennessee is, yes, there's seasons there. They're not as extreme as you would see in the Midwest, where I'm originally from, or down south with hurricane season and all that, but weather patterns change and all that stuff. So, Tennessee has its hiccups when it comes to weather too, but it tends to be a little bit calmer than other areas, but you still have to prepare for those different seasons because, they come up in life. So, uh, if you're, working with somebody, you're talking with someone that is, really kind of struggling with this whole I want to be successful, but I don't know how to say no. What are some things that you did that kind of helped you get comfortable with saying no? Because it's a difficult thing to implement if you're not used to doing it.
Right. I think first and foremost, people need to first start on the right playing field. And what I mean by that is I would look at people and I would be like, gosh, they're doing all the things and this and that. And I would look at that and say, geez, if I could only do that too. And but part of that also was they weren't married, they didn't have kids, they didn't have these other responsibilities. That's not the same playing field. That's a very different playing field. And so it's first we have to make sure what we're doing and what we're looking at is even possible for us to be part of. I can't have certain aspects of my business look a certain way because I do have a family, because I do have kids. It's just the name of the game. And so, but we have to start with ourselves in fairness and saying, okay, so this is my situation. I am married. That's amazing. I do have kids. That's fantastic. Now, how can I do and work with these things that I've been blessed with? And then once you have figured that out, the biggest thing that I work with my clients, and one of the biggest things that I did with myself, which was what currently serves me and what doesn't serve me. What do I want to keep in my life and what do I want to let go? For me, letting go of working every single weekend, I didn't want that. I it just it wasn't fun. It was more of a chore. That aspect of work I did not like, and I thought I don't want to work on the weekends. And then I thought to myself, well, who's making me? I'm doing this to myself. And so one of the boundary pieces that I always like to preface with people is a boundary isn't necessarily about everybody else, but rather like setting it with ourselves. Because if we don't start with ourselves and saying, hey, I am not going to work on the weekends, you don't need to, broadcast it across, all platforms telling people, hey, I'm not working this weekend. No, just like tell yourself, hey, I'm not going to work this weekend, and then just honor that space. The next thing in things that I didn't want to do, I didn't want to check my email and my DMs first thing in the morning because the reality was all of those DMs, all of those emails, they were really the requests that everybody else had for my schedule. And I thought, why do I just want to jump right into that? Again, I didn't, broadcast to them, hey, I'm not checking my emails until 10 a.m. I just went ahead and set that boundary for myself that said, you know what, Rachel, when you get up and you are ready to step into that place of work between this time and this time, that is going to be your time to do what you need to do that is a priority for your schedule in whatever needs to get done instead of just jumping to everybody else's, beck and call and their demands. And that's really where I was getting lost in saying yes to everybody. So most of the time when we say yes, it's either because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or we said yes too fast and we didn't take a second to pause to actually think, do I want to do this? Can I do this? And should I do this? A lot of people will also say, okay, well, then what do I do if I come into that situation? And I normally say, you need to just wait and say, hey, can I get back to you later today? Or is this something that I can get back to you tomorrow with? Because not only is that when you just say yes to everybody, then people also get a diluted version of you. So you're not showing to the best of your ability, and they're also not getting the best of you. So if you could just pause in that space, that is
Mhm.
where you create that. You're also honoring them as well.
Of course, and yeah, you want to be the best version of you for not only yourself but for others. And and I've had those conversations with people, and I tend to default to know first if, and this is just from my own personal experience, because I my schedule is such where I have it set up, and of course it ebbs and flows, but I have it set up to match what I want out of it, when I want to work, when I don't want to work, what I want to work on at a particular day or time, or things like that. And we're always inundated with things, emails, DMs, messages, offers, you name it. Everybody is out trying to um, share what they've created. They're offering, could be a product, could be a service, who knows? And they're out there and they're doing outreach and trying to, land clients, and that's kind of how the game works in many angles. So, most of the time I'll look at them like, no, that's not for me, but I'll at least let them know that, and let them know why. But again, it gets to the point now where it's like you get so many of them, like I could spend, or my assistant could spend all day just responding with not for us, not for us, not for us. So, there's systems that you can implement. And again, this is, for everybody to, tinker with themselves to figure out what works best for them. But you have to get crystal clear on what you want to do. And this, again, is one of those exercises that you should do frequently. I wouldn't say, maybe a weekly check-in with yourself, or monthly or quarter, whatever makes sense for you. For me, I'm doing a weekly check-in, and then I look at the month, and we just, at the time of this recording, we're done with Q1 of this year already. Time just goes faster and faster as we get older. It's insane. But at the end of the day, it boils down to figuring out what's important to you. Is it still important to you now? Do you want to change anything? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love that you brought up the fact of the quarters as well as weekly and monthly check-ins. I think that's where we get lost in the just the busyness of life. That is so normal. Everybody's busy. And I used to wear my busy as a badge of honor. I was like, oh, I'm busy, busy. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Now that I, look at my past self, I go, wow, I really wish I had this a lot more figured out. But what I can actually share now from that experience, and what I specifically would suggest to my clients is, again, just how like you framed it of a house. Not every room are you going to give the same exact attention. What you may do in the kitchen versus the bathroom, they're going to be different. And the way you show up is very different, right? And so that is the same with our life. And so I always start with, when you think of lifestyle, that is generally yourself, that is a self-care, those aspects, relationship, that could be with a spouse, with family, with children, extended family, how friends, that business, and then health. And what I do is I go in and I start really big. So I'll start with my first quarter. So I've got 3 months of, what do I want to do in this 3 months? We'll just say relationship wise. What do I want to establish or create in these 3 months with my husband? That may be a trip, a weekend getaway every 3 months. It doesn't have to be big. It can be very, very small, but I want to do that every quarter. Write that down. Okay, well, what do I want to do monthly? Well, maybe that's a date night one time a month, if that's all you can do, or weekly. And then ask yourself, am I doing when you've either done your weekly date night or your monthly? Did I make time for that? Did you already set it up on the calendar? Because if we don't do this, because this is the point of intention. The point of intention is setting that mark ahead of time so then it doesn't just pass us by. And then we go, wow, like we're already into the fourth month, of the year. It's like, where did the other three go? And, but instead, you can look at this quarterly, monthly, or weekly and be like, man, I'm making such big gains or such big wins in my relationships because I actually sat down for 20 minutes and wrote these things out for this is how I want to show up in these different areas. Business is the same way. And I will tell you, for me, the biggest thing with business is specifically going, how many, maybe, you want to be on podcasts. How many podcasts do you want to be on in your first quarter? And what do I need to do in order to hit that mark? And how do I need to show up every single day to make that happen? And when we take it in bite-sized pieces, rather looking at it in this big whole, then it becomes a lot more digestible. I like to even say this is the same with like weight loss. If you're looking at it in the health bracket, I want to lose weight. You have to set up achievable steps, actionable steps in order to get to that end goal, which may be 3 to 6 months to a year out. But if you don't know what those actionable steps are in reverse, then you cannot get to them when you're going forward. And that's why I say intentionality should be the core and be the at just at the forefront of our lives with everything that we do. It creates better relationships, it creates stronger, more productive businesses, it creates a more fulfilled life. So then you don't feel like you're on this hamster wheel and going, I just can't get off this thing. And I can say that because that used to be me, And so you can have a beautiful business, a beautiful life, healthy relationships, and all of these wonderful things. They can coexist together, but you also have to know how to create that in an intentional way. And that's what I love helping people do, just because it massively, massively changed my
Yeah,
life.
yeah, and it gives purpose to your life.
It does.
And again, I tell people this all the time, especially if they're struggling. It's like, well, did you design this life to be this way? And at first, I ask it as curious as I could, not accusational, just curious. Like, did you design it?
Absolutely.
And they're like, no. And I'm like, then I kind of help them trace the steps, and then eventually kind of clues in, and they go, wait a minute, I've actually designed things to be this way. And it's like, "Well, do you want to continue doing it that way? No. Okay. Well, then let's scale it back, and and I love, your approach on that is, if you want a goal, you want to reach something, whether it's losing weight or earning a certain amount of revenue or start a fam, whatever that goal or goals are, yeah, you know where you're at, you know where that is. There's, the distance between the two. Each step along the way, there's things. And a lot of people, they'll focus on, well, I do this to this, and I'll get to this to this to this to this. But they don't do it the way that you described as saying, yeah, here's the end goal. This is where you want to be. Here's the steps back to get to where you are right now. You should be able to look at that in both directions because you'll see things a little bit more clear, at least from my perspective. You see things a
Yeah,
lot clearer
you
when you're
do.
like, because then you go, okay. And what happens too, and when I do this exercise and I review my goals all the time, and, sometimes I change some things up because I'm like, yeah, I'm not motivated by that anymore. It's like, I'm more interested in doing this because I think this is going to create more impact for the people that I'm helping. And I think this makes more sense right now. So, I just shift it. But for me, it boils down to, when I work backwards, what I find is that in many cases, I feel closer to the goal than if I'm starting here because you're looking, it's like, oh, I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay. Well, you're looking at it and you're looking in the mirror and you're like, oh, but you're like, okay, what does that look like? Okay, what will that look like when I lose 5 pounds, or 7 pounds, 8 pounds, 9 pounds? What will that look like? And you get that in your mind of that end result, and you can go work backwards. And time again, I realize I'm actually closer to that than I thought. Because the steps to get to where you want to get to, a lot of them are, in many cases for people, are kind of already there. They just haven't implemented them yet. It's like you've got a toolbox and you've got all these tools and you've never used maybe 75% of them. But there's going to be a day where you're like, you know what? I need to do this. What kind of tool do we have? Oh, we need this one. Oh, we got that. Okay, boom. All of a sudden, you're like, look, we're going to get this done a lot faster. We don't have the 15 trips to Home Depot. It's just 10 trips this time, which is, I say that tongue in
That's a
cheek, but
win.
that's a win. It's like, yeah, it's like eventually, I mean, you can actually see your footsteps, from the parking lot. It's like that's my shoe print. Yeah, I've been here before. But again, you have all of these opportunities, and it boils down to, and the theme of this conversation has been be intentional with how you want your life to live and look and taste. Figure out what that is. Can you attain it? Absolutely, you can. You just need to choose to do it and understand the steps necessary. Find a mentor, find a coach, find both, whatever makes sense to you to help you get to where you want to be. But understand, okay, what does that end goal look like? I mean, what does it really feel like? Because, so, okay, I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay, why? And because I'll feel better. Oh, okay, a little bit more. Well, there's some more to this. What will that clothes feel better? You get to go buy new clothes. You will feel more confident. Let's flush all this out and put it out there. But look at it in a positive lens, not like, no, like, this is your goal. This is your dream. Don't look at it negatively, because if you're looking at your dream, something that would make you feel amazing, and you look at it in a negative light, that's the wrong approach. You got to look at it as like things are going to be awesome when I get to that point, but try to find your awesome right now, where you're at right now, because it just makes the journey so much better.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I will say too, with time frame, I think time frame is extremely important. So I do also I map out my quarters. So I have first quarter, second, third, and fourth. Uh, and again, being a mom, I got to my third quarter and that's summer. That's summer for us. My kids are out of school. And the reality is that quarter needs to look a little different. And and I have to set it up in such a way that is a win for me instead of it being like, this is third quarter. I'm not going to get anything done. It's like, okay, what can I do with this third quarter that I have? What are my expectations? And not setting ourselves up to fail. A lot of the time we set ourselves up to fail. And I think that 10 pound, losing 10 pounds is a great concept because it's, we cannot say, I want to lose 10 pounds in 1 week. I mean, it's like, okay, well, I'm sure that's not going to be very healthy. But not only that, it's not sustainable. And if you don't hit it, you're going to feel like a complete failure. So it's like we actually have to look at our goals and what we're trying to do in these time frames that are within our means and capability. And sometimes that's starting off small. Not everybody can go on. I wasn't able to go on a date night every single week. We didn't have that ability to do that. And that for that time period, that was okay. But we made alternate um things that we could do in that time that would maybe take that date night place. So you always have those options. But you have to get curious about it. And a lot of the time, people don't ask the question, what do I want my life to look like? Do I want to be crazy busy doing business stuff? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Do I want to travel more? Do I want to be a stay at home mom? Whatever it may be, you have to have that in place first. And then you have to go, okay, now what do I need to do in order to get that? And how do I need to show up in a realistic, sustainable, obtainable way over these next X amount of months or years? Because if you slowly chip away at these things, they will end up being a massive win in the end. But you have to slowly chip, chip, chip.
Yeah, it's like the improve yourself 1% a day in a year, you've 3x'd yourself and
Exactly.
almost 4x. And ask yourself, okay, if I was 4 times better at whatever you wanted to improve, what does that look like? And you're like, it's little steps along the way. That's why I always tell people when they ask me, what's my favorite leadership book? It's like The Tortoise and the Hare. It's the
Yes,
story.
it's
It's the
true.
truth. It's like the slow
It
and steady
is.
wins the race. I know the fast gets more attention and all that, but the ones that are consistent time and time again, they're the ones that taste the success a little bit more. So, Rachel, love this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and all this amazing work you're doing?
Yes, same, same. So everyone can find me at my website that houses all the good stuff. So it'd be rachelclosson.com. And I also have in there a free video series if you struggle with boundaries or that time management and kind of just getting into how do I say no, those types of things, difficult conversations. I do offer that in there. And then if there is anybody that is wanting to work a little bit closer on that intentionality, I do have a little something that they can contact me and just mention that. And I'm happy to go ahead and give that to them as well.
Awesome. I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So, Rachel, thank you for being awesome and being you. Really enjoyed our conversation today.
Thank you, Michael. It's been amazing.